Ferrari is not angry because Lewis Hamilton got a penalty. Ferrari is angry because Monaco may have exposed something much bigger. A 5-second pit lane punishment hit Hamilton at the worst possible moment, in the one race where 5 seconds can feel like a lifetime. But then the same kind of penalty started appearing again and again and again until the paddock was no longer asking whether one driver made a mistake. They were asking whether the system itself had failed. Hamilton wants the International Automobile Federation to open the data. Ferrari wants answers. Alpine believes Pierre Gasly was robbed of a Monaco podium. And if the measurements were wrong, this could change far more than one race result. Because the most dangerous part of this controversy is not the penalty. It is the possibility that the true winner and loser of Monaco were decided somewhere the fans could not see. And before this goes any deeper, subscribe to the channel. Monaco is the worst place in Formula 1 to lose trust in a decision. Because at most circuits, a driver can still answer back. If you get unlucky in Bahrain, maybe you attack on the next straight. If the strategy hurts you in Silverstone, maybe tire life gives you another chance. If traffic ruins your race in Austin, maybe a safety car brings you back into the fight. But Monaco does not forgive like that. Monaco traps you. The streets are narrow. The walls are close. The corners arrive so quickly that a driver barely has time to breathe between one risk and the next. Every lap feels controlled from the outside, but inside the cockpit, it is pressure stacked on pressure. One touch of the barrier can end the day. One slow pit stop can destroy the plan. One small decision from race control can change the entire meaning of a weekend. And that is why Hamilton's penalty landed so hard. It was not just 5 seconds. It was 5 seconds in Monaco. That difference matters. In a normal race, 5 seconds can hurt. In Monaco, 5 seconds can lock the door forever. You cannot simply recover it by being brave. You cannot just pass 3 cars and move on. The track does not give that kind of freedom. It turns every penalty into something heavier because the driver has almost no way to fight it with his hands on the wheel. That is the cruel part. Hamilton had gone to Monaco with something Ferrari desperately needed. A chance to turn pressure into momentum. Ferrari knew this weekend could not be treated like any ordinary race. The car was not the clear benchmark everywhere. Mercedes still looked dangerous, and Antonelli's pace had already become one of the biggest threats of the season. But Monaco is different because raw car performance is only part of the story there. A driver can still bend the weekend toward him. Not by magic, by precision, by patience, by knowing exactly how close he can run to the wall without touching it. By understanding when to save the tires, when to push, when to accept that the car ahead is slower but impossible to pass. Monaco rewards the driver who can live inside discomfort without panicking. That is why Hamilton mattered so much for Ferrari. He was not just another driver trying to collect points. He was the person Ferrari had trusted to guide a new era, the champion brought in to turn fragile weekends into serious results. And Monaco was the kind of place where that faith could be justified in front of everyone. But here is where the story starts to turn. Because once the pit lane penalty appeared, the conversation was no longer only about Hamilton's race. It became about Ferrari's control. Did they give him the right tools? Did the limiter behave exactly as expected? Did the dashboard warnings arrive clearly enough? Did the International Automobile Federation measurement match what Ferrari believed was happening inside the car? Those questions matter because Formula 1 is not just a driver pressing pedals. It is a chain. Driver, engineer, software, sensor, procedure, rule, steward. When one link breaks, the result can change. But when nobody can immediately agree which link broke, trust begins to disappear. And that is the part Ferrari cannot ignore. From the outside, a pit lane speed penalty sounds simple. The limit was 60 kilometers per hour. Go above it and the punishment comes. Easy. Clean. No emotion needed. But inside a Formula 1 team, nothing is that simple. The car has a limiter. The driver has a reference. The team has data. The governing body has its own measurement system. The pit lane has detection lines. The surface has bumps, grip changes, and tiny details that can affect how a car behaves at the exact moment it crosses a measurement point. To a casual fan, that may sound like technical noise. But in Formula 1, technical noise can become championship reality. Because the margin between legal and illegal might not feel like a driver charging recklessly through the pit lane. It might be a tiny spike, a tiny mismatch, a tiny moment where one system sees one thing and another system sees something else. And when that tiny moment costs 5 seconds in Monaco, it becomes enormous. This is why Ferrari's frustration is not just emotion. It is strategy. They know they cannot simply accuse the International Automobile Federation without proof. That would look desperate. It would make them seem like a team trying to explain away a penalty because the result hurt. Ferrari is too experienced for that. But they also know silence has a cost. If they say nothing, they leave Hamilton standing alone in a controversy that affects his result, his momentum, and maybe his belief that the team will fight for him when the margins get brutal. And for a driver like Hamilton, that matters. A champion does not only need a fast car. He needs certainty that the team behind him will challenge anything that could unfairly damage the campaign. So Ferrari walks a narrow line. They are not asking for special treatment. They are not saying the pit lane limit should be ignored. They are not pretending safety does not matter. They are pushing for something much harder for the governing body to dismiss. Transparency. Show the data. Show the calibration. Show why so many drivers were caught in the same kind of offense on the same day. Because Hamilton's case may be the headline, but it is not isolated. And that changes everything. Because Ferrari could be accused of protecting Hamilton. That is always the easy argument. When a superstar driver gets punished, some people will say the team is only angry because the penalty hurt them. Some will say Hamilton should accept it, move on, and stop making noise. Some will say Ferrari simply wants pressure on the International Automobile Federation because the timing was painful. But Alpine changes that story. Alpine does not have Hamilton. Alpine does not have Ferrari's political weight. Alpine does not have the same global spotlight following every word, every radio message, every expression in the garage. And yet Alpine came out of Monaco furious. That matters. Because Pierre Gasly's case was not just another small penalty buried in the timing sheets. It was the most emotionally damaging example of the entire controversy. Gasly crossed the line third on the road. In Monaco, that means something. It is not a regular third place. It is not a simple line on a results table. It is a podium in the most famous street race in the world. For Alpine, that kind of result can change the feeling inside the team. It can make a difficult season feel less hopeless. It can give the factory something to believe in. It can remind mechanics, engineers, strategists, and executives that even when the car is not fighting for wins every week, one perfect weekend can still break through the noise. And then, after all of that, 2 5-second penalties dropped Gasly to 7th. 3rd to 7th. Say that slowly and the scale of it becomes clear. That is not a tiny correction. That is not a minor administrative detail. That is a podium disappearing after the flag. That is a celebration turned into a protest. That is the kind of result that does not just hurt a driver, it wounds an entire team. And here is the part that makes the paddock nervous. Alpine believes Gasly was within the required parameters. That claim is explosive because it goes directly at the heart of the system. It is one thing to say a rule feels harsh. It is another thing to suggest the driver may not have broken it in the way the official penalty says he did. Alpine is not simply asking people to feel sorry for them. They are pushing toward the data, the sensors, the calibration, the match or mismatch between what the governing body measured and what the team believes its own car was doing. And once a team says, we have reason to challenge the measurement, the story becomes much harder to contain. Because Formula One is built on measurement. Every lap time is measured. Every tire pressure is measured. Every fuel sample, every wing deflection, every speed trap, every tiny piece of performance lives inside numbers. The entire sport depends on the belief that those numbers are reliable. So when a team questions the numbers behind a penalty that changed a Monaco podium, it does not feel like a normal disagreement. It feels like a crack in the foundation. That is why Alpine's right of review is so important. A right of review is not just an angry team asking the International Automobile Federation to look again because the result hurt. It requires something more serious. It requires new evidence, something that was not available to the stewards when the decision was made. In plain English, Alpine has to bring something that could actually matter. Not emotion. Evidence. And if that evidence is strong enough to reopen the case, the International Automobile Federation faces a nightmare scenario. Because the question will not stay limited to Gasly. It cannot. If the same measuring system produced multiple pit lane speeding penalties in the same race, and one of those penalties becomes questionable, then every similar decision immediately attracts attention. Hamilton's 5 seconds. The penalties involving other drivers. The entire pattern from Monaco. That is the dangerous word again. Pattern. One mistake is a mistake. A cluster becomes a problem. A cluster under formal review becomes a threat to credibility. And this is where Hamilton's position becomes even stronger without Ferrari needing to shout louder. Ferrari can watch Alpine pull the first thread. If Alpine proves nothing, Ferrari still has questions, but the International Automobile Federation can say the system held up under challenge. If Alpine proves something, even something small, Ferrari suddenly has a much bigger opening. Hamilton's demand for a probe would no longer sound like frustration. It would sound like foresight. That is the chess match happening underneath the emotion. Publicly, the sport is talking about penalties. Privately, teams will be thinking about precedent. If the governing body admits that a pit lane measurement can be questioned successfully, teams will treat future penalties differently. They will demand more data. They will preserve more evidence. They will challenge more aggressively when the margins look suspicious. And the International Automobile Federation knows this. That is why the situation is so sensitive. If they open the door too far, they may invite a wave of future challenges. If they close it too quickly, they may look defensive. If they explain too little, suspicion grows. If they reveal enough to satisfy the teams, they must be absolutely certain that the data is clean. There is no painless option. And Monaco made it worse by being Monaco. Because at a track where overtaking is almost impossible, penalties carry extra force. A 5-second punishment does not operate the same way there as it does at a circuit with long straights and multiple passing zones. In Monaco, track position is a treasure chest. Once it is locked, almost nobody can break it open. That is why Gasly's fall looked so brutal. He did not lose third place in a wheel-to-wheel fight. The crowd did not see him get overtaken. There was no dramatic defensive error, no late lunge, no tire collapse under pressure. He finished where he finished on the road, and then the result changed. For casual fans, that is confusing. For teams, it is alarming. For the International Automobile Federation, it is reputational danger. Because if the governing body gets this right, it can calm the storm. It can show the measurements, explain the process, defend the decisions, and force teams to improve their own systems. The controversy would still hurt, but the sport would have an answer. But if the explanation is weak, or if the review suggests the system was not as precise as it needed to be, Monaco will become a reference point for every future dispute. Every close pit lane call. Every 5-second penalty. Every race where a result changes after the flag. People will point back and say, "Remember Monaco." That is how mistrust spreads in Formula One. Slowly at first, then all at once. And for Ferrari, that is the moment the Hamilton issue becomes more dangerous than the penalty itself. Because once a driver begins to feel that decisions can fall without full clarity, the pressure inside the cockpit changes. He is not just racing the driver ahead. He is racing the rule book, the sensors, the stewards, and the fear that one invisible reading can undo the work. Hamilton has spent his career living with pressure. But this kind of pressure is different. It is not the pressure of braking late into turn 1. It is not the pressure of defending on worn tires. It is not the pressure of a rival filling the mirrors. It is the pressure of uncertainty. And that is exactly what Ferrari cannot allow to grow. Because if Hamilton is going to lead Ferrari into a title fight, he has to feel that every part of the operation is aligned. The car, the strategy, the pit wall, the procedures, and the protection from the team when questions are legitimate. Monaco put that alignment under stress. Alpine made the stress public. And now the International Automobile Federation must decide whether to treat this as a normal post-race dispute, or as a warning that the sport's penalty system has reached a breaking point. Because the longer this goes without a clear explanation, the more the story shifts. It stops being about whether Hamilton sped in the pit lane. It stops being about whether Gasly deserved 3rd or 7th. It becomes about whether Formula One can still convince its own audience that the result on Sunday is the result they can trust. And that leads directly into the reaction nobody in the paddock can fully control. The drivers, the teams, the analysts, and the fans are all starting to ask the same uncomfortable question. If Monaco needed this many penalties to produce a final result, was the sport enforcing order or exposing disorder?